Hello, hello. I'm Sarah, and um, so today I want to talk a little about the cult and police. So, yeah, sort of my history with police or perspective of police, um, stemming from the cult. My hair is bothering me. Okay, so um, we were taught growing up in the cult to respect police, but also to be wary of them and to, like, they were seen as the enemy. So we needed to be safe from them. And we would not, you were not supposed to be honest with police because you couldn't tell them things you actually did because outsiders wouldn't understand, including police. So that was sort of the general perspective. So I've always had a bit of a discomfort being around police. And I know that's not unusual because a lot of people have some issues with being near police. Just in general, every time I've been pulled over for a speeding ticket, I get severe anxiety from it, which I don't think is that unusual, but I think it's exacerbated because of my past and my childhood. Um, Oh, before I forget, don't forget to like, subscribe, do the sharing things, and etc. algorithm stuff. Okay, back to the story. So, we had a history in many communes across the world that there was a period of time where we were getting raided quite regular. It wasn't like absolutely everywhere, but we did get raided a decent amount. A lot of communes, we opened up what we called media homes where we would invite the authorities to come in and check us out. Those homes I have mentioned before, but media homes were great ones to live in because chances were they were going to treat us a little better, and we were also likely to have better food, better clothes, just a better environment in general because we were trying to show a better situation. Um, I was personally never in a home that was raided because we were a cult. But I was in a home that was raided by police when I was 9 years old. And here is the story. Um, we lived in, I think in Baja, Rio. I think we were in Baja at the time. It's hard to keep track of everywhere we lived because we did move a lot. But we lived at the Lego house. I know that. We called it the Lego house for the monument that was out front of the house. Um, so we lived in the Lego house, and um, I don't remember exactly when the cops showed up and came in. I was working at the time. I was in charge of three toddlers. That was my job for the day. I was potty training them, teaching them flashcards, math dots, and so on. And that was my job. Yes, I was 9. I took care of when I actually worked in childcare professionally years ago. The ratio was 4 infants to one teacher, and these children were they would have been considered infants or just like close to transition age into toddler room. So for an adult, a trained adult, the ratio, at least here in Minnesota, was 4 infants, to young toddler, 4 to 1 supervisor. I was 9 and I was in charge of 3 that were right around the 1 year mark. So that still would be infant room. Just for an example of what my life was. Quick sidetrack. There is no way I can tell this story and not sidetrack on a few tangents. So I'm not going to apologize for it. It's just going to happen. Anyways, the police raided our commune. However, they did not know that we were a commune, that we were a cult, none of that. They knew none of that when they came. They actually had gotten a call from a neighbor for suspicion of child organ trafficking. This was Rio, and this was, if I was 9 years old, it would have been 89. So this was the 80s in Rio. And so, yes, if you've ever seen any, yes, those things do happen. And I know because our family and other people that I was living with, we were investigated for it. The neighbor thought it was suspicious that so many children were coming and going at all sorts of hours. Part of the reason that kids were coming and going is at the time we had the best setup, I guess, for a school. So we became a school home where other communes would bus kids over. Like some of the smaller communes would bus kids over to study at our school home, which is funny because I was 9 and not doing school. I was taking care of other people's children. But yeah, we would have other kids that would come and go. We had families that would move in and move out. So there was just all these families with lots of kids that were coming and going. And for the neighbors, they just are like, why are there millions of children coming and going from this single house? What they didn't know is that we were a religious cult commune, and that's why. But anyways, we had like emergency in case of this happening, like what do you do, sort of loosely in place. And so what they did was, as adults were coming home, they started arresting or taking in all the adults and, you know, the older, yeah, just any of the adults. So as children weren't removed from the property, at least none that I'm aware of. And so someone else ended up taking the small children. And well, we had talked about, okay, rewind. I'm like, it was so chaotic. So my brain is like, well, this was happening and that was happening and the other thing was happening. There was a lot happening. So trying to retell a story where I'm just one perspective out of like 60 people. So in my room where I shared with, it was actually a really small room. We only had 4 of us. I think we had single beds in that room. Did we? Single beds, not double or triple bunks, huh? But we had trundle beds. And they had moved the mattress off one of the trundle beds. I don't know where they put it, but they had moved it somewhere. And we stored most of our literature like in this attic crawl space, but it wasn't everything, and we had stuff that was around the house. And in this little space, it was actually used as like a study space during the day, so our beds turned into like day beds. And the pillows, we would move them all into like, we had this bin thing that we'd stuff all the pillows in. So all the pillows were removed from there. I don't know where they put those, but they filled those pillow bin things full of literature, like the racy shit. And then also the bed underneath, the trundle bed that slid under my bed, they also filled that with literature. And back then, I think we still had the Davidito book. We had, which if you have not looked for the Davidito book, probably don't. It's very traumatic and very disturbing, and that's a whole other story. But yeah, so they had hid all their literature and stuff under there because during the course of this investigation and raid of our home, they didn't want it to be figured out what they actually had found, because that would be problematic as well. So they wanted to volunteer to pretend to be sick to lay on the regular bed that hid all the literature that was underneath that bed, so that the police would be less likely to look under. And they had to be a fabulous performer. And so I volunteered. I always fancied myself to be quite dramatic. And so I put on my favorite nightgown, which Grandma had sent me. And it was it made me think of Little House on the Prairie. It was this long flannel nightgown, and it had the puffy sleeves and the ruffles around the wrist, and it had the lace around here and the little pearl buttons coming up, and it was like a off-white with little tiny red roses all over, and I felt very fancy. However, a long ankle-length puffy long sleeve flannel nightgown in Rio when it's 90 some degrees even at night is not ideal. Also, to help me look ill, I was rubbing my cheeks, and people piled blankets on top of me. At the time, they were waiting for more backup to arrive because they realized there were so many people, they needed to sort them out. So we were kind of you know, rustling around here and there. So we did have some time to prepare because they didn't come with this. If you suspect someone of like harvesting children's organs, maybe come with a full on SWAT team. I think it was like 4 cops. It was not like a huge abundance. Like they filtered in, and then as adults came, they would take them back to the precinct. So there was not a ton of cops swarming the place. They just kept removing the adults. So we did have time to do this. Granted, we did it fairly quickly, but yeah, so someone took over taking care of the small children that I was watching, and I switched into this nightie and then committed to my role. I, pinched my cheeks and I burrowed myself under a pile of blankets. Other people contributed to this pile of blankets. And I laid there, and I very quickly, being in a long flannel nightgown, and then under a pile of blankets, and by pile, I don't know, it was like 5, 6 blankets. It was a lot of blankets. It was heavy. Like I could feel the weight of the blankets on me, which basically I had like a bunch of other people's blankets on me, because in Brazil, one light blanket and you're good. But no, I had just an overabundance. And there was a window that was open, and it was about 3-4 feet from me. And the tiniest gust of wind that might come in felt so good, because I was so hot. I started fading in and out of consciousness. I thought I may be falling asleep, but now when I look back at exactly how I was feeling, I started feeling really lightheaded. I felt very unwell. I felt nauseous. I felt dizzy. I felt actually very ill. I think I may have been suffering from some form of heat stroke. I'm really not sure, but I don't know that I was actually sleeping. I feel like it's possible I passed out a few times. I'm not really sure. I do remember waking up for a minute and seeing the backside of a couple police, because it wasn't a real bedroom. It was more like a little nook. And so there was an archway, not a door. And so I could see them and I could hear them talking. But I wasn't really making out what they were saying. My brain was just really groggy and muddled. Yeah, when I retell it and when I think about it as an adult, I'm like, don't think I was just napping. I remember feeling very, very ill. The sad side of being the fabulous actor that I was I didn't get to really see everything else that happened or know a whole lot more about that. Eventually, the police were able to separate, like, these children belong to these parents, and these children belong to these parents, and so once they sorted it all out and we brought documents and such, then our parents were released and brought back home, and that was that. So we were not discovered for being part of the cult. In the cult, we had a constant fear of police, both for being discovered as part of the cult, and also in the end times, they were going to be the agents of the Antichrist. We were end of days, last days, tribulation, cult that was constantly preparing for the world to end and for the Antichrist to reveal himself, themselves, whatever. So we were always in this basically preparing to die mode, and like, how could we die like less horribly, sort of thing. So the general animosity towards police was a prevalent thing in the cult, and I have had it's left me with this anxiety in connection to police. I mean, no one feels excited to be pulled over by police. I understand that they're meant to help and they're meant to hopefully stop crime or solve crime more, it seems, or, enforce law. But I still get really, really anxious at the sight of police. I do have a couple police people that I know that seem okay. But today on my drive home, there was a big accident on the street just a few blocks away, and it's right outside the main detention center where Chauvin was brought when they moved him out of Hennepin County. That's where they held him at the BCU, Behavioral Correction something. It's not far from where I live. Did I just dox myself? Anyways, it's not far from where I live, and I drove past that corner today, and there was a car accident on the corner, and as I was approaching and saw just all these, the red and blue lights, it took a lot to calm myself. I have been pulled over specifically for speeding because, I can't help it. I have this condition where my foot is like made of lead and it just likes to go heavy on that pedal. I get ticketed. I've been doing better with that. I keep trying. Cruise control has saved me from tickets. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of reason, like personally, to have an intimidation, anxiety, or any real major stress related to cops. I'm typically treated decently, even though I do get ticketed because I do speed a bit. But I haven't had a speeding ticket for 6 years, 7 years, so I feel like I'm improving. But I mean, the cops usually interact with me just fine. I am polite and respectful and white, so I tend to do pretty well with the interaction as well. But I can't help it. I get so flustered. I remember the first time I got pulled over for speeding. I was going very fast, 21 miles over the speed limit. I got off with the lowest possible speeding ticket I could get, and I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, and he didn't ticket me for that either. However, I didn't realize I had got a speeding ticket because he gave me a citation, which I thought was a different thing. I didn't know what I thought it was. I just thought it was like a warning. And my one sister, her boyfriend at the time, was like, I'm like, I almost got a ticket, but instead I got a citation. He's like, that is a ticket. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a citation. He's like, look on the back. And I was like, oh, you're right. I was so flustered when I was pulled over. I couldn't find my ID. I couldn't find my insurance card. I couldn't find anything. I was in the glove box and I could not find it in the place where I left it. As soon as he checked it. I had to bring proof of insurance and all that. But the minute I got home to my apartment and I opened the glove box and I looked, I was like, it should be here. And it was right there. And I literally could not find it. I was so flustered at being stopped and it being a police. And I was like, and there was nothing for them to discover about me. What, they're gonna find out I'm ex-cult? Like, nothing. Like, there was no reason for me to be that terrified of them, but I was. And this was something that was instilled in me. When I first came to the States and I was in Baltimore, Maryland, and we would can and fundraise on the street corners, we were regularly booted from the street corners. A part of me is, I guess, resentful, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. But a part of me is a little disappointed. I was 15, 16 when we were canning on the street corners in the dead of winter, not dressed properly a lot of times. And cops would come and shoo us off. I don't ever remember a single cop asking if I was okay, if I was safe, if there was, like, why I was out here. I don't know. If I saw a young person, a not adult, asking for money on the street corner, even if an adult's present, I don't know. I just feel like that's something that an authority figure would maybe want to look into. I just feel like there was so many opportunities for people in position of authority to do something to help us, and they didn't. Now, I'm pretty sure if they had asked me if I was okay, I probably would have given the standard answer, and, I'm good with words, and I can talk my way out of something, so it's possible it wouldn't have led to anywhere. But just No one having the curiosity to just ask, are you okay? Like, are you healthy? Are you well cared for? Why are you out here all the time? Like, because we got booted off all the time. I don't know. I have my own modern day issues with police. Um, in case you're wondering my stance, Black Lives Matter, no thin blue line, nothing. I totally understand cops serve a purpose. We absolutely do need them, but we absolutely do need them to also do better, do a lot better. When you're in a position of authority and power, you have more responsibility. So yeah, and it is a choice to join the police force. You can also choose to leave. It is not, there is no blue lives. This is going to be a whole other subject, but yeah, blue lives is not a thing. It is an occupation. Yes, it can be a dangerous occupation, but it is an occupation that they chose. Black people do not choose to be black. They just, that is the skin color they are born with. They are not inherently anything other than just people. So yeah, that's a whole other video. And I'm not trying to get into all that today. Just trying to explain my personal experience and issue. I still get extraordinarily uncomfortable around police, especially a lot of police. I'm very good at masking it and being a good upstanding citizen. But yeah, to this day, it makes me very anxious. So yeah. That was a little snippet into the cult and our perspective with regarding police and such. They did befriend some police and people in position of authority, like the head of FBI in Brazil, and I'm sure in other countries as well. But yeah, I still to this day get bad anxiety around, one or two, that's okay, but several, or if it appears like they're following me, even if I'm going the speed limit and I'm not at risk at getting a ticket. But yeah, I still get a lot of severe anxiety in relation to that. So that is my story about police and the cult. And yeah, I'm going to call that a video and go get some dinner and play with my dogs. So y'all have a great day. Ciao.